hi everyone, it's good to be back with all of you again. So today we have, like Hiranti said, we have Gimanta, who graciously accepted our invitation to be here with us today. His day job is a banker, uh, and he's an ardent and really great bird photographer. I think he does other wildlife too, but he seems to specialize in bird photography, and he has some amazing shots which were taken very close to all of where all of us live. So I think that that should inspire us to go and check out our surroundings a bit more. But looking really forward to hearing a bit more from Gimanta. And we have Raj. We all know Raj. Raj travels all over India mostly, and so many other places. And we wanted to share his experience here as well. And I would now, without taking a lot of time, so how this format would work today is Gimanta and Raj will briefly share a few of their photographs, and that would be a part of their introduction as well. And then we will move into the discussion, where you would also have the space available to ask questions. So that's the format of our conversation today. So with that, over to you, Gimanta. um, please share your pictures and tell us a little bit more about what makes you fascinated with birds.
Thank you very much, Inoka. Am I loud and clear?
Maybe you can be a bit louder.
Okay, hold on. Okay, now okay? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Good evening to all PSSL members. And thank you very much, Hiranti, Inoka, and Ashan for having me here today for this session to share my knowledge with you. I hope you will learn something new and that I'll be able to help you to improve your photography skills. Yeah. Okay, so in the first session, I will show you some of my captions, how I managed to capture them, and why I have selected them as the top 5. And later on, I will talk to you on how you can improve your photography skills using your existing equipment. Since I am going to focus mainly on urban wildlife birding, all images that I'll be presenting to you today are captured at the Navala Valley Park, which is also known as Navala Urban Wetland or Navala Walking Path and so on, which is one of my favorite places to take photographs, just few kilometers away from where I live, and so much of bird action taking place. The reason for me to select this topic is to show you that despite of your busy schedules, office work, and other family commitments, you don't have to go to Yala or Vilpattu or other national parks to take great birding shots, and even you can use these places as your training grounds to improve your skills and experiment mainly on your gear and techniques. Yeah. Okay, so I will share my screen with you. Can you see the image? Yeah.
Yeah. We can.
Okay. Okay, so the first image I have selected for you is called Hunter Hunted. This image this is the image that won me the Wild Sri Lanka Photographer of the Year title in 2019, and this image is one of my best captions up to date. This is actually one of the last images of a very long image burst session. So initially, I'll explain a bit about this image. So initially, there was only the darter and the fish it caught. Then it was trying a very long time to swallow it, but the fish was too big. So me and one of my very good friends were there on the edge of the walking path, capturing every attempt to swallow the fish, which was going on and on for about good 2-3 minutes. And suddenly, then an Indian cormorant decided to join the action and went straight for the darter's neck. but unfortunately the fish fell into the water and I think it escaped. Then again there was a big fight between the darter and the cormorant for a few seconds. Yeah, so there are two key facts that I want to mention about this image. Uh, yeah, so one is, even though there were two of us, me and one of my good friends, waiting for the same action, almost at the same place, maybe like 1 or 2 feet away from each other. I really don't know what I did right to capture this image in this manner, but for sure I know my friend did something wrong because he missed this great shot. So it's always very important to be ready for the unexpected. He didn't get this action, and I think he missed a once in a lifetime opportunity. The second thing, I submitted this image to another competition in Sri Lanka organized by the Ministry of Land Reclamation, where the exhibition was held at the Deosaru Park. The difference was the image I submitted at that time was with a different crop, and my post processing or editing skills, you call it, at that time was very at a very low level, elementary level. So therefore the final image I submitted was a completely different shot, but the original image was the same. So I don't think it was even in the top 50. So then I thought, okay, this image is as of no use, and never looked at the image for about good 2 years. Then during that period, I benchmarked myself against great photographers around the world. For example, Thomas Vigeon and Ben Smith, where even up to date, I still study their images to improve mine. And I know I can never be like them or match their skill levels, but it's always good to have a higher benchmark so that you will always push your limits and try to match their shots. So I learned Lightroom quite well from my very good friend Ganidu. And one day I remembered this image again and decided to redo the post processing. And so this is the final image I ended up with. So as you can see, preparation and timing was the key factors for this image. So moving on to my second image. This image was captured not so long ago, and it was, uh, sorry. Yeah, this image was captured recently, and this is also one of my favorite shots. This is also from a very long series of shots because I usually go with bursts. At Valley Park, there were these bamboo barriers to avoid the water, plants, and garbage moving towards different areas, blocking the waterways. So after many visits to the Valley Park, in the evenings, I realized that this action takes place like prayer daily. So these herons land on this bamboo barrier and walk up and down, catching the red dragonflies who always tend to fly close to the barrier. The water was very dark, so I managed to get a good reflection, and obviously, again, timing was the key factor for this image as well. So the next image, this is also taken very recently. After several attempts, I managed to get its wings parallel to the camera, because normally if you capture a hummingbird, either it's at an angle or it's poking its beak into a flower, collecting nectar and so on. So this is a rare image as I see it. Uh, so with a bit of practice, managed to focus the bird, but then the shutter initially was not fast enough. So once the shutter was corrected, had many attempts to get a straight shot, which gives the full wingspan. And finally, with a bit of observation and prediction, did manage to do a bit of pre-focusing and managed to capture this image. So the fourth image is called uh, pelican tear. So it's actually not a tear, it's a drop of water which ran down from the pelican's beak, which then hit the water and which bounced back up due to the drop effect of water. And so with a very high shutter speed, I managed to capture this image, especially because I knew what I wanted to shoot in the first place. So I was attempting this shot for a long time. This is one of my favorite images I have captured under my own theme. I call it Black. During my next session, I'll also show you a few images from this theme Black. So this theme Black was initially inspired by one of Lakshita Karunaratne's images, which is called One Eye, which you can Google and find if you're really interested. In a more artistic, uh, it's a more artistic image than this. So this type of a post processing is debatable because the background is burnt and it's almost black, but yes, it's allowed in most of the competitions, and this image has had few acceptance in international competitions, whereas Lakshita's somewhat similar post-processed image has won so many international awards. So the idea to take this sort of an image came to me on a day I decided to observe birds instead of just shoot images. So on some days, if I'm really in the mood, I keep on shooting. But on some other days, I decide to keep the camera aside and observe the birds, where I learn their behaviors and so on. So I managed to notice that the water dripping from its beak bounces back just once before it goes into water. So after about 3-4 visits to Navala Valley Park, I finally managed to nail this image. My last image, uh, this is a quite hard shot to nail due to many reasons. So mainly because little grebes, this bird is called little grebe. So these birds are not there when you really want to capture them. Then they are tiny as ever to focus and to get good details. Then they are usually calm and they never run on water when you want them to run. So you always need to keep your focus on the bird and observe them, and like you need to forecast on which direction it will run. So I tried so many days to capture this bird, but I failed. Then, as I told, I kept the camera aside and I observed them, and then I learned to read their body language. So then I finally, with a bit of experience, I managed to predict when they will run, to which bird will run, and to which direction it will run. So once I mastered the prediction part, I managed to capture many shots, even at 600 millimeter, like this one. So this is at full 600 millimeters. But I predict this image because of its background and the action taking place. Yes, thank you, Inoka.
Thank you, Gimanta. That's amazing pictures, but we will come back to ask you lots of questions. Over to you, Raj, for a little intro about your pictures and yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. Right now I'm in Chennai due to COVID. I'm not able to come to Sri Lanka for the present situation. As you all know, India is a wide country and diverse country, and many forests and many states have different forests. So what my presentation is basically more on animals which is not found in Sri Lanka, because generally you will see leopards and all the stuff found in India as well. So what I thought is I thought I'll select few of the images which is not there in Sri Lanka, so that you all get a fair idea of, apart from, because when you say India, it's mostly the one animal, which tiger, which comes into your mind. Whereas there are other species of animals which is like, which is not that popular, but it's also highly popular among Indians and even the foreigners as well. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. it clear?
Yes.
You all can see the screen, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is called Indian God. Some people call bison, but it's not bison. It's actually Indian God, which is predominantly found mostly in the southern part of India. Yeah, few is available in the middle of India, but otherwise mostly southern, like Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Kerala. It's mostly available in those kinds of places. It's a very tough animal. Actually, people get scared. Like even more than the tigers, people get scared about these animals and elephants because they tend to sometimes charge at the vehicles or something like that. So this is one of the animals I don't think since it's not available in Sri Lanka, I thought I'll start with that. And this is called yellow-throated marten. This is a very rare species to even to find in India. Even I have been to many forests in India. This is the only photo I have. Couple of photos I have. And this is the only time I was able to catch hold of him. It's nocturnal animal, but it comes and it keeps hunting in the daytime. Very, very rarely it comes out. So it is something very rare catch. Even for some people, it was a lifer. So I thought I'll share this as well. And as you all know, this is rhino. This is available only in a forest called Kaziranga, which is in Assam. The Kaziranga is the only forest where you have elephants, tigers, and rhinos together. It's the only forest where you find all three. Rest of the forest, either you find tiger and lion, or only tigers, or only not lions, elephants. So this was actually a photo which we were able. Actually, we stopped for a stop there. You have a place where you can stop and have your drink or something, as a parking bay. We parked it, and we were lucky to have him very close by us. So actually, I was able to get down from the vehicle and take this shot. So usually you're not allowed to get out of the vehicle, but since that was the area where you can get down, so I was very lucky to get a eye-level shot of this majestic animal. And this is called swamp deer. In Hindi, they call it Barasingha, which is also a rare species, which is not available most of the park. It's available only in Kana, and I think it's available in Kaziranga also. But I took this photo in Kana. In fact, a lot of Europeans who comes to take this photo more than the tiger to Kana forest, because Kana has got tigers as well as Barasingha, but people love to take him than the tigers because it's very rare species, and it is also endangered. So I think the Indian forest officials are doing a very good effect to preserve this animal, and I think they have also moved few of the animals to some other parks so that to preserve their production and all this stuff. And this is called water buffalo, which is again found in Kaziranga. Actually from the side view, you will not see the horn that big, but it's a very, very, very large horn it has got. And I love this photo because of the natural habitat, and it's kind of a very pleasing with the water and with the reflections and all the stuff and all. So since, as I told you, there are many other animals which is available in India which is not known to us, except for tigers and few of the forests. And even lions are available in India, whereas I've not been to that forest because it's available only in one forest, which is called Gir, which is in Gujarat. So far, I've not visited the place, and I'm not able to show you those pictures since I've not visited. I've taken any of the Asiatic lions. So that is another animal. So I think only in India where you have lions and tigers together in one country. Yeah, maybe later on I can show some of the other photos if time permits.
Thanks a lot, Raj. So, and I distinctly remember seeing Barasingha for the first time, and it's a beautiful animal. And sometimes you feel that, it's a treat to see that even beyond the tiger. So, yeah, beautifully captured. So with that, let's move into our discussion. I'll ask the first question from Gimanta, picking up on something that he mentioned during his presentation. He mentioned a very distinct point there. How do you how do you take pictures and how do you improve your photography skills and take that perfect picture using your existing equipment, because we always hunt for better lenses, better cameras all the time, but how do you optimize your existing equipment to take that perfect shot? Gimanta, over to you. I think you're on mute, Gimanta.
Thank you, Inuka. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, so I'll share my screen again, and I will do a small slideshow, and I'll try to match the images with what I'm saying. So is my screen visible?
not yet.
Yeah,
Not yet.
sorry. Uh, Now?
No. Can the others see?
Yeah.
Now it's coming on. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
now,
you.
now.
Yeah,
Oh,
perfect.
okay.
Okay. So, yes, as Inoka said, in order to improve your photography, you need to stay ahead of the game, as I say. So, in other words, you need to be smart and plan your shots rather than going in for random shots. So, people often say wildlife photography is hard because you simply don't have control over your subject nor the lighting. But it doesn't have to be like that always, because the lighting exists from some direction. Hold on. And the object is definitely there. And let's say if it's a bird, it will be definitely be doing something at any given moment. It could be flying, it could be hunting or resting on a stump or a branch. So it's a matter of using them both in a way you need, or in other words, you need to be in control of the situation to get a good shot. So there are few key areas that I have identified that are essential for you to be in control of the situation. The first thing is you need to know what you want to shoot. So this is very important. You need to plan your shots as much as possible. If you don't know what you want to photograph, an easy way is to get a good understanding is to look at other photographers' captions, either in the same location or a similar location, and it will be much better if they are using similar gear to yours. Then you will get a good understanding on what sort of shots are available in similar locations. So let's say if you don't plan your shots, you might miss good opportunities and you will not be able to capture the dives and the takeoffs or the flight shots because you simply wouldn't know what to expect. So also over time, you need to compare your old images with your new images and see if you have improved, and compare your images against the ones you benchmark. They could be international photographers or local photographers, and see if you have done better and how you can improve and so on. And once you think that you are in par with other photographers with similar gear, then it's time for you to improvise and look at new techniques or creative images, or even set higher targets for yourself. I say this because at the end of the day, no one is going to laugh at you because you couldn't capture a flight shot or a bird in midair. But if you attempt and succeed, a lot of people will be talking good about you and how good your images are. So the second point I want to emphasize is you need to know your environment. This is very important aspect people tend to miss, and it's not only for urban birding but also even if you are visiting national parks like Yala or Vilpattu. I'm sure Raj Prasad will agree with me on this. People don't have a good understanding about the environment. One key factor is the direction of light is very important. Since we are using ambient light, it's advised not to shoot against the light because your backgrounds will be brighter than your objects unless you're trying for a backlit shot or a silhouette shot, or unless you can cover up the bright sky and let's say using editing techniques, if you can drop the highlights, it is said to point your shadow at the subject, which means to always have the sun behind you so that your subject will be lit up. Also, there is a saying that not to shoot if your shadow is 15 to 20 degrees away from your subject, because the subject will start to show very sharp shadows and underexposed areas. But with my experience, I do not agree with this, because it all depends on your requirement and post processing skills, as I said, of the photographer. So another important aspect is the direction of wind. Birds almost always take off and land against the wind. So this is mainly applicable when landing or taking off from a tree, or it could be from water, because the bird's wind, the wind helps to generate more power for the bird to take off. This also applies to birds of prey when they are catching fish in midair, let's say. But this is mainly applicable to large birds with greater wingspans. So if you're planning to take a takeoff shot or a flight shot or a head-on shot of a bird, always try to make use of the wind directions. For example, turns and let's say, I mean, I should have a sample image like this one. So for example, let's say an eagle will always hunt against the wind if they are preying on a fish, as it is very easy for them to take off. Then another key important thing is always know about the day you're trying to shoot and the weather. So sometimes birds are not very active on gloomy days and may not be hunting. So you might want to avoid gloomy and rainy days, and mainly the light will also be a bit dark, but an overcast day will be ideal for shooting, since you can get very smooth light even around, let's say, 10 or 11 a.m. Also, there are some days that you might want to avoid, such as OA day, especially because in the walking paths there will be so many people walking around, jogging, or with their kids, small kids throwing stones at birds or into the water. People wearing very bright colors, so and people talking to each other loud on their phones, or especially. And sometimes you meet very helpful people who call themselves mobile phone photographers, who tries to get very close to the bird to get a full frame and ultimately end up chasing the bird. So always try a lesser disturbed day. Maybe a weekday would be perfect. And also you would want to identify birds seasonal behavior, such as migrant birds and mating seasons of different birds. For example, let's say this one. Uh, Even though most of us have seen this bird, it's a Indian paradise flycatcher, also known as the Asian paradise flycatcher. It's known to be a migrant bird, but there are very few birds who reside in Sri Lanka. um, Towards the latter part of the year, usually they migrate. So if you go to Vilpattu or Yola towards October, November, you can definitely see this bird. But what amazed me was, after identifying its call, I managed to spot many of them at the Navala Valley Park. So as I said previously, all images I'm showing you are from the Navala Valley Park. And for my luck, two of them were in their color changing plumage. So there were many debates in FB saying that Siuru Hora, which is the rufous colored one, and the Suduradi Hora, which is the white one, were two different species. But very few of the bird experts said it's the male bird that changes the color after 3 years from rufous to white, while the female remains the same. And these two images managed to prove that point. And these two images were taken in two different years, one in 2018 and this is in 2018 and this one in 2019. So both in November, if I remember correctly. So that shows you this bird is mainly available for you to see in during its migrant period. So the third and last point that I would like to emphasize is you need to know your gear. You need to be able to change your settings and change your settings very fast. I would say, like shutter, aperture, ISO. If you can change it without looking at your camera, that would be much better. And also you need to experiment as much as possible, and you have to come up with a perfect combination for your shooting style. There is no, I would say, there is no uh, perfect, or there is no correct method of shooting. Some people use aperture mode, some use shutter, some manage to balance the exposure using ISO. It doesn't matter as long as you're comfortable and you know what you're doing. So let's say, and also try to use a tripod or a monopod to minimize the shake and get sharper images. Some experts do say to turn off your VR or IS and at 2000 and above shutter speeds mainly to increase sharpness, but I tend to keep it on since because I always forget to turn it on again. If you're using lenses over 400 millimeter, use a long lens technique. Definitely, there you can research on it in let's say Google or YouTube. It's called long lens techniques because even the slightest change at 600 millimeters from your camera's end will result in a centimeter or maybe an inch at the far end. So you always need to be mindful about the techniques you use, and or else you will end up with photos with less sharpness. And always try to avoid sunny and hot days because you will not realize it's not visible to your naked eye that there are so many heat waves between your camera and the bird that will take away the sharpness of the bird, let's say feathers or its face. So there was one time that I was wondering why my images are not sharp during daytime, and later on I realized that it's due to the invisible heat waves that's taking away the sharpness. Yes, Inoka, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Gimanta. That was really, really insightful. I would request the audience to, either pop in their questions. We will ask a question from Raj and then turn it over to the audience also if you have any questions. So Raj, when you travel a lot around India, could you tell us how do you prepare for your excursions? Because sometimes, it's not that you can always go in your personal vehicles. You have a lot of gear to carry. You need to go into distant places. How do you prepare for your journey?
Yeah, see, basically, I travel mostly starting from Chennai because I live in Chennai, so I start from Chennai. So either we take flight or by train. So train is not a problem to carry as many gears as you have because there's no weight restriction as such. But when you're going by flight, internal flight has the restriction, which is about 15 kilos you can take in, and hand luggage you can take about 7 or 8 kilos. So in that case, you need to be very prepared as to how much gears you want to carry or how much clothes you want to carry and all this stuff, which basically once you know how you wanted to travel, how many days you want to travel, you can figure it out. It is depends on person to person. Because I'm a guy who try to take lot many clothes. There are guys who take very few clothes and they try to wash it there. That way you can manage on your own. But basically, coming to the main question, how do you prepare? Actually, the preparation in Indian forest we start much around like 3 to 6 months before we try to travel. That is mainly because the Indian forest, unlike Sri Lanka, the vehicles are not much allowed in much in numbers. Basically, in a particular day, you are allowed only 60, if at all, maximum to maximum 75 vehicles. That is very few forests which allow 75 vehicles. Otherwise, it will be between 60, 65. That's the range. So during the peak season, you need to, and none of the forest allows your own vehicle. It's all you have to take the safari vehicles, which is mostly gypsy vehicles. There are only 4 people are allowed to sit in the vehicle. And all the vehicles will be accompanied by a guide and a driver. So it is not the driver who guides you, it's a guide who comes separately, which is being assigned by the government of that particular forest. So we start our program at least 3 to 6 months, depending on the forest, depending on the popularity of the forest. So definitely not the, we don't look like before very close to 3 months, you don't get the tickets, so availability will be very difficult to get it. Particularly, for example, if you want to do a full day trip in Ranthambore, where only 4 vehicles are allowed per day. So which in that case you wanted to take a full day or half a day trip, we plan 6 to 8 months before. We start booking 8 months before and get that slot. Only then we'll be able to get a half day or full day trips. Very few forests allow that full day and half day trips. Most of the forest allows only in the morning and afternoon trips, which is morning sometimes 3 to 4 hours depending on the forest again, evening 3 to 4 hours depending on the forest again. So, and due to this very few vehicles, as I said, we prepare much earlier. That's the main point here. Rest, of course, you can book your flights and all the stuff. It's all minor issues. That's not a big deal, I guess. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that. Raj, just so looking at that and your extensive travels and picking up about the bird behavior and, the experiences Gimantha had, could you share some of your own experience predominantly around the Indian forests and probably the mammals that you've seen there? What are some of the behaviors you've observed and have also been able to capture? And maybe share a bit of your experiences there as well.
Yeah, sure. See, basically, I don't want to touch upon the birds because we have an expert here. I am only a bird photographer, not a birder, whereas Gimantha is a birder as well. See, there's a very big difference between a birder and a bird photographer. So I take bird photography. Of course, I know certain behaviors. It's not that I don't know, but obviously I'm not that expert in bird behavior. Mammal behavior is more of it's not that complicated as like a bird behavior because maybe I can share some of the pictures which I've taken in animal behaviors. Can I share this? Basically, I will confine my behavior to the tigers because that's the picture that I have not shown in the first presentation. Can you see the screen?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. See, generally, tiger is a very territorial-oriented animal. As you all know, it has their own territory, and they are very, very secure about the territories. And there are lots of tigers which have died due to territory fights. So when they try to, look around, or when they try to secure the territory, they generally come and, like this, they try to smell the bark and try to mark their territory and see whether anyone has, trespass their property or kind of a thing. So you can very well be assured when tiger comes close to the tree, it generally try to, smell the tree. And so you can be very assured that, okay, this kind of setup, or sometimes even, it's try to climb and, try to scratch the tree to make a mark. And obviously once they smell, they definitely mark the territory. So this is one of the photos that it's trying to mark the territory. So you can be rest assured once it smells, it's going to regularly mark. So you can be very well be prepared that it's going to mark, and you'll be, you can be very rest assured to take that kind of similar shots. And as I told you, sometimes they try to, mark it with their nails or try to, sharpen their nails. These kind of behaviors you can be rest assured, but these are very, very, sometimes it doesn't happen. Even I have been to many forests. This is one of the shots that I had. Not always it happens, but you can be prepared to have these kinds of shots always. And while they're trying to drink the water, you can always be very, you can try to take a picture of the reflections. Sometimes they really bend and take, sometimes. So when they bend and take, you won't be able to get their full body. So in this case, he was trying to go down. So before that, I was able to take this photo with a full body in reflection. Sometimes you will be able to get only the head. So this is another behavior. It comes close to the water and wait for it, and then so it gives time for you to unlike bird where it takes off very quickly. The mammals are a little slow. It takes their time, and so you're prepared to take your shots. With preparedness. And definitely when there is a mother and a cub, you can get these kinds of shots, which is cuddling and playing. Mostly when there's a cub, it tries to come and cuddle with the mother. It's kind of you can be rest assured you'll get more of these kinds of shots when they're with the cubs and all the stuff. So these are when these kinds of things happen, you can be assured, you can be very prepared to take different shots. See, in this kind of photo, you don't know whose head is that, whether it's a cub's head or the mother's head. So it's a kind of different composition that you can try out or during these kind of cuddling happens. And generally, these kinds of things happen because when they are crossing the road, the mother or the big tigers will generally try to walk, whereas the cub is very scared of the vehicles. It will not cross, it will not walk, it will try to jump from this end to that end. So when there's a cub, you can always be sure either it will run or it will try to jump. So these things you can make yourself prepared when there's a cub. But when there's a big tiger, it will just try to walk and it will try to protect the cubs crossing, and it keeps waiting for all the cubs to cross their path, and then they move on. So obviously these kinds of cubs, when they try to jump, you will get a very good action shot. And as we know, we all try to see the pug marks. So how the pug mark looks is one thing that I wanted to show here. Though it's a back shot, you can see the foot of the tiger. So this is the mark which we always try to search whenever you go for a tiger safari. And depending on the pug mark, you try to kind of track the animals and where it's gone and which side it's gone, and when there's a good tracker, they know which path it has taken, and so it's easy for us to track the animal. And see, yes, tiger sighting is sometimes becomes difficult, but with proper good tracker, you will be able to narrow it down in a better way, so that you will be able to get the tiger sighting in much easier manner. And this is one of the tiger which was trying to see the property, see the tree there, whether anyone has intruded into his territory, kind of thing. So it was just walking around and smelling all the places and marking. So I just thought the way it goes, it's kind of an S-curve, and trying to see how animals move on. This is an environmental shot that I wanted to show how the tiger looks with all the leaves and trees, and how they mark and how they blend with the nature. Sometimes it's very difficult to even identify in this kind of environment. Even it might be very close to us, we will be really miss the tiger it's very difficult to, it's just camouflage with the environment. Yeah, those are my features. Yeah, so basically mammals' behavior is much more easier compared to the birds' behavior, because as I told you, it's when they're with the cubs, they have their routine, the cuddling and those things happen. When they're about the water, it's good to drink the water. So marking territories and all those stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much. Certainly tigers are always the sort of what your eye catches, but you've shown us much more. I'm just trying to see if the audience has any questions. We have about 12 to 13 minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience to Gimantha and Raj?
Hi, this is Yoga. I have a question to Gimantha. Gimantha, you talked about the backlight.
Yes.
I think some people also argue that sometimes, using the backlight will also give more, what you call, prominent to the captures. So do you say that, completely avoid backlighting, or when there is an opportunity to make use of that backlighting?
Yoga. No. So as I said, I do not agree with that saying to always have the sun behind you, because that is, as you correctly said, it's also a great art. Whereas people nowadays tend to go for artistic shots, and nowadays there are so many silhouette shots, and it all depends on your post processing skills, how you want to balance your subject lighting and how you would want to balance your highlights. So there's a very interesting option in your camera if you're shooting against the backlight. If you may know, there's an option called highlight metering mode. So in this mode, the camera automatically selects the brightest point of your image, and it will always suggest you a lower metering reading to ensure that your highlights are not overexposed. So this is a great way for photographers who likes to shoot against backlight. And as I said, backlight is not uh, it's not a bad thing, but then you need to be skillful on how much backlight you're getting in, and whether it's ruining the image, whether your highlights are overexposed, or it's a matter of should I can I show an example, please?
Sure.
Yeah, please.
So one second. Um, so so this, even in these images, the lighting is not directly from behind the photographer. This is not a backlit shot, but it is almost a backlit shot. You can see the rim lighting around its feathers. So this was taken purposely where I wanted to capture that. So this is the common behavior of a cormorant. Once it's out of the water, it lands on a stump and it flaps its wings to get rid of the excess water. So in a backlit situation, you can light up this water droplets very nicely if you manage to balance your highlights. Whereas in this case, I have failed to balance. If you can see the tail part, it's overexposed and the details are all gone. So backlit shots are not bad, but as long as you know what you're doing and as long as you're in control of the exposure, it's a very artistic shot.
Yeah, to add to Gimanta's point, see, backlit shots, as you said, as Gimanta was saying, there are only two shots available, basically like, either a silhouette or a rim light shot. So generally, when you go for a backlit shot, it is better to underexpose a little bit so that you can avoid that highlights as Gimanta was saying. So that is another technique that you can try it out. Yeah, there are only two options. Either, but when you want to go for a rim light shot, if the sun is directly behind the subject, then you won't be able to get the proper rim light for a bird. So it has to be slightly angled towards 45 degree or something like that. Otherwise, you will be able to get a backlit shot as a silhouette shot when the direct sun is directly behind the subject.
Correct. Just to
Dimant,
add,
what is the camera option you said is there? What is the option in the
it's
camera?
highlight weighted metering. That's in Nikon. So you have matrix metering, center weighted,
Yeah.
spot metering, and in D500, D850, 750, and so on, you have
Highlight weight.
highlight weighted metering.
Okay.
So your
That's
metering will
not,
work according to the. Sorry.
I don't think it's available in Canon, but there is a highlight priority, like, it's highlight blinker is there, where it shows where the highlights have been blown out. That is there, but I don't think as metering, I don't think in Canon it is there.
Okay. So
But there might be some similar thing. We need to check. Highlight
should be.
weighted metering. Yeah.
Yes. So in this image, is my screen being shared? Yeah.
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 Okay, so in this image, this is a backlit shot where I managed to recover the details of the heron. So in the original image, egret, sorry. So in the original image, the egret was quite dark and I managed to recover, whereas my post-processing is not so good. And similarly in this image as well, this is also a backlit shot where I managed to recover details of the bird, whereas you can see the water droplets are lit very nicely because the light is from behind.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? We can take in a couple of questions.
Yeah. Okay, George, go ahead.
Gimanta, I have a small question for you.
Yes.
Now, what's the lens that you used for your photography for birds?
So currently I use a Sigma 150-600 contemporary, and for birding I use a Nikon 80-400.
And you use a tripod, right?
No primes.
You use
This one.
It depends.
difficult,
Yeah.
no? Do you use a
Yeah.
tripod?
Sorry.
Do you use a tripod or do you handhold?
Most of the time it's a no.
Handhold, no? Yeah.
Mainly it's handheld, Hiranti.
Yeah.
Mainly
Yeah.
handheld, yes.
Yeah, that's
Because
what I
it's
thought.
very hard
Very
to
difficult.
take flight shots
Yeah.
unless you have a very good stable body
Stable.
with a good gimbal head, which is very
Yeah.
expensive.
Very.
So handheld would be fine as if you can master the panning and all that.
Yeah. And the Gimanta, out of the first 5 pictures that you showed, the last picture, I see it
Yes.
as a wide angle.
Okay.
Is it correct? Or is it a wide angle lens you used for it? The last picture?
No. That was off from my 150-600, and that has a very broad crop. It's not the regular crops that you see. So from time to time, I did few experiments with my crops and with my crop aspect ratios, and this was taken in 2018, if not mistaken, where I got used to this unique cropping style. Whereas I only wanted the very important things to be in the picture and get rid of the excessive highlights and underexposed areas. So that is the final crop I ended up with. Uh, so no, it's not from a wide angle, it's a 150-600.
Right. Then one last thing. What is the best time for us to go and see these birds, in the mornings or Valley Park?
Well, George, it depends. I have taken great images around 12 noon and
My
let's say
goodness.
11 a.m., whereas people would never dream of taking pictures. But then again, the probability is very high from let's say 7:30 to 10, and evening 3 to 5:30, I would say. But those are the exact times where people come for jogs and their regular walks with bright colors, as I said. So it's a bit tough to get a good image on a busy day. But if you go there during a weekday, you should be able to get some good images.
Right. Thank you, Gimanta. Very nice
Welcome.
presentation. Great
Thank
one.
you.
Thanks. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I have a question, Gimanta. This
Yes. Highlight. Yes.
So I assume that your black background photographs were taken at the same kind of time intervals that you mentioned. So
Yes.
the first question is, you have applied. I am assuming that you applied a lot of post processing.
Post processing.
And yeah, the second question is, what kind of burst rate are you using with your camera?
So my camera does about 10 fps, and let me share my screen. So this black background images, to be honest with you, they are not much processed in terms of the background. They are at Navala Valley Park. If you have been there, where the Gardens Arc big boat is parked, right onto your left, there is a very shady patch of trees, and the shadows are onto the water. So if you manage to go on a low angle, and if the bird is out between that shady patch and yourself, you will get good exposure on the bird on a very sunny. So all these images are taken on extremely sunny times, let's say 10:30 to 12, I would say, or maybe 10 o'clock in the morning, where the sun is very harsh. So what I do is I meter onto the bird's exposure, then automatically the dark backgrounds get very dark. This you can see the same technique in macro photography people use. They expose to the object and then automatically the background gets very dark and sometimes it gets black. So if you see carefully, you can see patches of leaves and other items floating on the water, which I have not removed. They are still there. So this image, sorry, am I clear?
Yeah.
So this image I have not removed and replaced the background. It's just a matter of increasing the contrast slightly. So the darker colors will get closer to black, I would say.
So you are using spot metering here,
Yeah, I was
I
going to ask same question.
I
Are you using
always use spot metering.
spot
I always
metering?
shooting spot. I don't go for center weighted or metrics. This highlight weighted also I recently learned from one of my friends called Anjita who lives abroad. But I have not experimented much on that. I'm used to spot metering, whereas I expose to the bird.
And to
So
actually
you
keep
do,
that high, the rate, the burst rate, you probably have to use a very good SD card to make the transfers happen, right?
Yes, so I use a D500. So in my camera, you can keep 200 shots in the buffer. So
Okay.
usually my cards are around 100 Mbps if not mistaken. So image will be around 10 MB. I should be able to shoot around 30 to 35 without a lag.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
I have a question to Raj along similar lines. What are your typical camera settings when you go into the wilds in India?
Yeah, mostly I take either mostly in aperture priority, but I always look at the shutter speed. So depending on the shutter speed, if it's low, I try to increase the ISO or something. But mostly I am comfortable with aperture priority. Of course, birds I try to go with shutter priority. Manual I very rarely take unless there's a necessity where it's kind of where I want to take some experimental shot kind of thing. But it's whichever way you're comfortable, you can take it. It's not a big deal that this is the right kind of setting that you wanted to have it. So I always prefer to take it in aperture priority, and as I said, I always have an eye on the shutter so that I don't miss the actions. So depending on the lens, I try to adjust the shutter. For example, if it's a longer lens, I keep the shutter which is very fast so that I don't have a shake, because when you're in a vehicle, you don't have the comfort of using the tripod and also mostly you're in handheld. So in that case, you can, and mostly I use either evaluating metering or spot metering depending on the situation. If there's a brighter or a darker background against a lighter or a darker bird, I use spot metering. On general circumstances, I use evaluating metering. So that's the way I look at it, basically.
Thank you.
And mostly I'm into I very rarely go into multi-focus points. I always go for center focus point and move the focus points to decide area where I want it to be.
Thank you, Raj. We might have.
I just have one
Thank-
question for Raj.
Yeah.
Anoka. Raj, if you are to prioritize the parks that we would like to visit in India, what would be your priority and what time of the year?
See, basically summer is the best month to visit because there are a lot of tigers comes to the water holes. Because I think you don't want to come to see for a park without seeing the tiger. So you wanted to see the tiger. Of course, I have seen tigers even during the winter times and summer times. But summer is much probability high because they come to the water holes to cool themselves and to drink the water. So among all the forests, Ranthambore is number one because that's the best forest and best scenic view and all the stuff and all. But you can visit Kana, Tadoba, Bandhavgarh. There are plenty other forests as well. As I told you, there are every state has got their different forests. But you can start with Ranthambore, which is very popular among all the foreigners. And if it's very close, means you can try out Kabini because it's very close to which is Bangalore. From there, it's just about
Yeah.
3 hours drive. Otherwise, Ranthambore, you have to go to Delhi and then come to Jaipur, or multiple flights you have to take. Here, you can directly come to Bangalore, and from there you can drive down or something like that. Kabini. Kabini is famous for tigers and leopards as well, and it's a very beautiful forest. But one of the best forests I would say is the Jim Corbett, which is very scenic, very beautiful. It's very beautiful during the winter time as well. Which is again you have to travel to Delhi, and from Delhi it's about 6 to 7 hours drive again. So that's because it's a vast area. You have to keep traveling a lot in India.
Hmm.
That's the only disadvantage that we have here.
Hmm.
But summer, again, as I told you, summer is, I don't know how many people can take the summer, because it's unlike Sri Lanka, this summer here it's really hot. It's like above 45 degrees centigrade. So it's like, that's the minimum I'm talking about, during April, May, June, it's in peak summer. So if you can handle the summer, it's well and good.
Thanks, Raj.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So we just crossed about an hour. Do we have one more question, or otherwise we can wrap up? Okay.
I have a comment to Raj.
Sure.
Raj, I think when comparing with Sri Lanka, allowing restricted number of people to the wildlife is a great thing, I would say, because of that type, there are a lot of other measures can take place, protecting the wildlife, animals, etc. So that is one of the most lacking part in Sri Lanka. If you take some of the wildlife parks here, I think there is no control. So any amount of people can go. Number of safari jeeps allowed is massive. So that really a worrying factor for all of us here in Sri Lanka. I think even most of the international people also. So in that way, I think you are doing a great job. I also want to thank both presenters. It's a very wonderful presentation. Thank you very much for all your tips and suggestions.
Thanks, Yoga. Thanks a lot. Yeah, that is the only thing that we lack in Sri Lanka, because allowing too many vehicles. Because I think once the wildlife survey was done in Sri Lanka, and they came out with a report saying that the people who come from abroad, who wants to visit Yala or Vilpattur, the second time they really don't want to visit the place because of the number of crowds that's happening out there. And the second thing that's really important is the phone works throughout the park. That's a very big mess around, because once the sighting happens, everybody calls the other person to come to that place. Whereas in India, none of the phones, once you get to the forest, none of the phones will work. Very rarely the phone works. And even in the walkie-talkie, they don't give information to the other vehicles to come, and when the sighting is happening in that place. So as long as you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, you don't get it. That's it. And they don't like to block the other vehicles as well. They park in a little acceptable way, so that the other person is not disturbed, and they allow the animals to walk in a free way. When they try to block, immediately they try to reverse, so that the animal doesn't have any blockage to walk freely. Whereas I've seen a lot of places where the vehicles get blocked, and even sloth bear crossing in between the vehicles. I've seen a lot of places. So that I think we should really. I mean, it's not only the wildlife. I think as a person, we should also try to tell our drivers to keep that decorum. Otherwise, it doesn't going to happen in any way.
So I think we can thank you, Raj, for all those insights, because I think we don't see, some of us who have not been to India would not know what's going on and how it compares to Sri Lanka as well. I think we are at the top of an hour, a little over that, so we can probably wrap up now. But sincerely appreciate you joining us all the way from Chennai. It's almost like having you over here at one of our regular meetings. It has been fantastic seeing your pictures. And to Gimanta, a huge thank you. I know being a banker is not easy. You would have had to rush home to do this. And I know how excited Gimanta was, and he was willing to, he just needed to share everything he knew. So he took a lot of pain to prepare for today as well. But we look forward to seeing more of you at PSSL and with the Wildlife and Nature Group as well. And with that, on behalf of the Photographic Society of Sri Lanka and the Wildlife and Nature Group, thank you ever so much for making time for us.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us. And thanks a lot, Gimanta. Even I learned a lot from you. Your photographs were fantastic. And you are very free to share your knowledge. It was fantastic. Wonderful. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having us.
You're welcome, Raj, and thank you, Inoka, Hiranti, and I thank Ashan also for giving me this opportunity. There was a lot more that I wanted to say, but time permits. So hoping to see you all again soon, maybe at a PSSL committee meeting. Yeah.
Yes, we will see you soon
Yes,
there.
we will see you
Okay.
soon. Thank you. Thank you, Inoka. Thank you, Raj. And thank you, Gimanta, for putting the effort to get this panel discussion together. I hope the people who were here enjoyed it and learned something. I learned a lot today, actually. I hope the rest of the team also learned a lot. And yes, we will get Gimanta to do a more. I know, as Inoka said, he really wanted to share all what he had. So maybe we will arrange one day where he could actually share more details about his photography. Let's discuss, and we will keep you posted. And Raj, hope to see you back here. I don't know when.
I think September they're planning to open the flights, I believe. So I should be
Yeah,
back.
but we are not going to allow. We are not going to allow any Indians, Raj.
I'm a Sri Lankan. I'm a Sri Lankan. Don't worry. I'm in India with Sri Lankan.
Anyway, hope to see you soon, Raj.
No, I'm like a chameleon. I keep changing color, whichever suits me.
Yeah. Hope to see you soon, and hope you can actually participate in live at some of our programs soon.
Sure. Very good.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Naomi.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thanks a
See you
lot.
soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.